Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm Dylan Count Curley, editor at Happy Valley Insider, and today I'm joined by managing editor at WV Sports of the Rivals Network, Keenan Cummings, here as we are just 48 hours away from a much anticipated season opener in Morgantown between Penn State and West Virginia. First, Keegan, thanks for joining us today, and how have you been?
Good, good. It's glad to be talking about football again. The off season gets a little
Yep,
wears you out after a while. You cover
yep.
recruiting, you do all the stuff leading up to the season, but it's nice to be actually talking real football again and kind of diving into the weeds of really, without a doubt, one of the marquee matchups across the college football landscape this weekend.
Absolutely, and that actually was my first question here. Is there's one of the most anticipated games of the Week One slate in college football, and it's a really good one. But as we sit here, 48 hours before kickoff, recording this Thursday, just a little afternoon. What's the general buzz right now in Morgantown about Saturday's game? I know last year in Happy Valley, there was a buzz. Penn State fans didn't really view West Virginia as a big rival. West Virginia was coming off a little bit of a down season the year before, but this season, this game appears to have a lot more buzz about it. Part of that is thanks to Pat McAfee for sure, but in town, what's been the general buzz?
Yeah, you can feel it. It's starting already. This place loves college football. It's a smaller college town, but this place is the epicenter of Mountaineer football is the epicenter of this place. It's
Yep.
two different places entirely when school's in and when school's not in. It takes traffic gets backed up. It's crazy, and this weekend's going to be nuts. It's already started. Mon County schools, they were going to get out a 2 hour delay, uh, or 2 hour early dismissal originally on Friday, but they went ahead and canceled school because they expect the traffic to be that ridiculous when the buses would have been coming through. So that kind of gives you an indication of how crazy this is going to be. And really, one thing people have to understand about West Virginia fans, if you've never been to Morgantown or never interacted with them, they love their football. And they love
Mhm.
any excuse for their football team to be good. It's always a party in a sense. So
Sure.
this is the first time under Neil Brown that West Virginia fans really are kind of, I don't want to say optimistic, but really believe they have a chance to make some noise in the Big 12. It was really a rebuilding project once Dana Holgerson left. And, you started to see that last year come together. They got 9 wins. They have some momentum coming into this year. And the team that West Virginia played, that team that West Virginia squared off against Penn State in the first game is nothing like the team they closed the year with.
Yeah.
Personnel, a lot of things. So there was a lot of improvement throughout the year. There's a lot of excitement, and you mentioned it. There's going to be Pat McAfee show here, which is going to feature a ton of West Virginia former greats. That'll be packed tomorrow. Yeah, Saturday, big noon kickoff. You'll have all these things going on, and there's a lot of people that are. The line has gone down in this game. There's a lot of people. There's a buzz about this game that really wasn't there last year. I know it
Right.
kicked off at night, I know that, but it was more like, hey, this is the Penn State Invitational. I think this year, whether that's true or not, we're going to find out Saturday, but there's more of a belief nationally that, West Virginia has a chance in this game at home.
Yeah, definitely. This is I personally think this is a West Virginia team coming in the season that can compete for the Big 12 title this year. And in the new age of college football playoffs, that conference championship gives you that automatic bid to the playoffs. And I mean, that's the great thing about the 12 team playoff, in my opinion, is that it really gives a lot of more teams that potential to reach the college football playoffs. And I can't imagine how big that would be for West Virginia as a program, but also that fan base. I would imagine they'd go rabid if this team was able to potentially get to a playoff later this season. Um, Talking about the team itself, uh, before we dive into some specifics, it does seem like this team is also carrying a little bit of a chip on its shoulder from that game last season. I know there was some comments about that final touchdown Penn State scored last year in the closing seconds. Um, do you think that? Have you gotten that general sense that this Mountaineers team is coming to this game with a chip on their shoulder from last year and has something that they want to prove to, I guess, Penn State, but also the nation?
I think some of that is a little overblown just because that's
Sure.
the attitude they take with everybody.
Sure.
They really identified themselves, kind of reinvented themselves in a sense, about 22 months ago, towards the end of the 2022 season. that they were going to be a different football team. People forget that early in that year, that season, that was JT Daniels. They were throwing the ball around, being cute. They had a new offensive coordinator, and then Graham Harrell was there. It was a completely different offense. And with 3 games left, they kind of decided, hey guys, we're going to use our strengths. We're going to play Garrett Green. We're going to run the football. We're going to be tough. We're going to be physical. And since that point, West Virginia leads the nation in terms of 140 plus rushing yards per game consecutively. They have 16. Defensively, they've tackled more than they've ever tackled the last 2 off seasons. So they've kind of embraced this. We're going to be physical. We're not going to be scared of anybody. We have a chip on our shoulder. I don't want to say like Michael Jordan, but you kind of look for excuses. You look for reasons to get mad. You look
Sure.
for reasons to be slighted. And last year it was this team was picked 14th. This year it's this team was picked 7th, and a lot of our players are not getting respected. And you go down the list. So yes, some of those things have been said. I think there was one comment by a defensive lineman, but he didn't mean it in the way I think it's been portrayed. I think it was
Sure.
more he was on the field when that happened. He remembers that. So I
Yeah.
think that necessarily, but most of them, most of the players you talk to, they kind of avoid the question and just say, we're focused on us. We're trying to do us. So
Sure.
there's always going to be a little bit of that, I think, because, that was a late touchdown. It was definitely kind of was what it was. But
Yeah.
I do think that this is really just how West Virginia is. You're going to hear, as ridiculous as it sounds, you're going to hear kind of these same type of comments against, Albany next week because they've
Sure.
just tried to embrace this underdog mentality.
Sure. Now again to the team itself. Obviously, the running game is, like you said, is tremendous. It's going to be one of the best running back duos in the country this season, and that's I think almost part of this game that's going overlooked is there are four fantastic running backs on the field on Saturday. Four guys who probably are all going to go to the NFL, and C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim White, and then of course Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen for Penn State. But at the same time, the passing attack for West Virginia uh, has had its ups and downs in the past. Last year, uh, only averaged 206 yards per game. Quarterback Garrett Green had some ups and downs. His development's been one that people have been watching this offseason. Uh, where is Green in his development? Do you think he's ready to take a next step in his game this year? And do you see West Virginia trying to throw the ball more this year, or is this still going to be a team that uh, for the most part, is going to pound and ground opponents and just try to run the ball down their throat?
That's the question for the West Virginia offense. Really, you look at what they did last year. This is a team that ran the football and tried to go over top. The biggest
Yeah,
focus this offseason is for Garrett Green to get better in those intermediate, short areas of the field because you kind of look at his numbers, it's surprising. He was very good throwing the ball downfield,
right.
really struggled in kind of, I don't want to say those layup throws that you should make, but really missed on him. There were some couple situations against Penn State last year that his feet weren't set and he just drifted and made bad throws when the throws were there. So he knows that. It was the main focus of him this offseason. He worked not only with West Virginia's coaches, but in tandem with his personal quarterback coach to kind of improve that, work on his feet, keep him from drifting, do some of the basic fundamental things that can make you better in those areas. Now, will it be improved? We'll see. I think that that's going to be the question. You look at the numbers, the coaches have talked about it. Garrett's talked about it. Fall camp over fall camp this year from last year, incredibly improved in terms of his completion percentage and everything you wanted to see. You look at what he did last year, he only completed 53% of his passes.
Yeah.
And the offense at the end of the year was humming. He was
Mm-hmm.
doing that not really being nearly as accurate, leaving a lot of meat on the bone because of that run attack. It's hard to stop what West Virginia is able to do. You got two running backs and you got a quarterback that also rushed for 760 some yards last year. So there's a lot of dynamic elements there. And the one thing that West Virginia really invested on this offseason is trying to get that wide receiver room better too, because last year they were playing a lot of freshmen, true freshmen or
Yeah.
redshirt freshmen. Two of the guys are former walk-ons that have really developed in Hudson Clement and Preston Fox. So those guys are all a year older. They went out and got a few transfers. They want to be able to. I don't think they're not going to come out and be the air raid. It's not going to be that
Sure.
necessarily that. They're not going to be throwing the ball every down, but they do want to be able to successfully throw the ball more in those situations and try to put the defense in really conflicting situations.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because obviously Penn State knows that West Virginia is going to try to run the ball a ton in this game, and if West Virginia is going to win this game, they'll likely have to make a few big passes along the way, especially late in this one. The one thing that does stand out to me about Gary Green is despite that 53% completion percentage, uh, he does seem to be smart in his decision making. 16 to
Yes.
4 touchdown interception ratio last year. And, in a game like this, not turning the ball over is going to absolutely be a huge factor for both teams. You talked about that wide receiver room. The offensive line, I believe, lost a few pieces over the offseason, but by the sounds of it, this should be another really good offensive line for the Mountaineers this fall, correct?
Yeah, it's been a development there too. Since Neil Brown got here in 2019, they decided they had a really bad offensive line in 2019. No knock to those guys, but they had 51 yards rushing or fewer in 7 of their 12 games.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to do. And you look at where they were last year; they led Power Five teams in rushing. So that's kind of the progression you've seen. They decided to go young and kind of play guys, let them develop, and you're seeing the fruits of that labor now. Now they're missing Zach Frazier. You don't replace a Zach Frazier.
Yeah.
He's going to start for the Steelers this fall. I mean, everybody knows who that is at this point. But 6 of their top 8 guys returned from last year. They have an NFL offensive tackle in Wyatt Milam, who hasn't given up a sack in 2 years, including going against Penn State last year. So he's challenged. The Big 12 has a lot of good edge rushers as well. So you got that. But their center that's stepping in there is Brandon Yates. He's not a new name. He's played a lot of football over his career. New position. He played it a little bit last year,
Yeah.
but new position. He's not going to be the same guy as Zach Frazier. He's more athletic, kind of do it more in space as opposed to Zach Frazier just simply moved people. That's what he did. So it's going to look a little different, but I think West Virginia has confidence in their offensive line. They're all upperclassmen, and they've all played a lot of football. So I think that it's going to be, again, the engine that makes this thing go.
Sure. Shifting to the defensive side of the ball, the defense last year for West Virginia, I believe took a step forward from 2022, but still overall not a great defense by any means. 26.2 points per game, allowed 381 yards per game. Um, it has taken steps forward. Is there another step forward in this defense this year based off the intel what you've seen or the intel you've heard about this Mountaineers defense and into the season?
That's the hope. You expect to get better, and I think that they feel, both on and off the record, they feel as confidently as they have with the depth they have.
Sure.
Depth is kind of a dirty word here at West Virginia, especially defensively. You hear about it every fall, and then games kick off, and where does it go? Where's our
Yeah.
depth? Where's our depth? Because depth doesn't matter if you can't trust to put people in the game, and I think you're finally getting to that point. You saw that with the defensive line a few years ago. They started kind of going to, I don't want to say hockey style substitutions, but they would play 8, 9 guys. Yeah, they
Sure.
started to trust their depth a little bit. I think you'll get that at linebacker this year. They've got 5 guys they trust. The secondary, they invested in the secondary heavily in the transfer portal. Yes, they lost a consensus All American in Beanie Bishop, but as a whole, on paper, this group should be vastly better than the one last year. They
Yeah.
went out and got a lot of guys, 6 different defensive backs. They have some guys returning like Aubrey Burks and Anthony Wilson. So there's confidence, but you got to go out and prove it too. Paper doesn't win you football games. If it did, why are we even talking about this? So I think that West Virginia, they feel good about it, but I think it's more you got to see it in the game because these
Sure.
guys have looked good in practice at times, but they need to see it in game. And you're what better way to find out than against a Penn State team that's top 10 in the country?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting too because it's a Penn State offense last year that despite being top 15 in the country in scoring, took a lot of flack for not being explosive, for struggling in the rushing attack at times. And it's an offense that's under a new look this year with Andy Koltenicky. But of course, that also means that's a offense of coordinator that West Virginia is familiar with from his time at Kansas. Um, well, I guess with that, what would you say is the biggest question mark for this defense heading into the season? If Penn State's going to beat this West Virginia defense on Saturday, perhaps more consistently one way than the other, what way do you think that would be?
West Virginia's done a pretty good job stopping the run the last few years. I think they did a pretty good job against Penn State last year. Really, when you go back and look at the
Hmm.
numbers, I think
Yeah,
that the thing that I'm concerned about is also something I just mentioned could be a strength is the secondary because you don't know.
sure. Yeah,
It's I don't worry about the corners as much. I think they found two good players that are going to help them, at least starting wise, in Aiden Garnes and Garnett Hollis. Those are guys that have played a lot of football, played football at a high level. Hollis in the Big Ten, but I think that the safeties behind Aubrey Burks and Anthony Wilson, who might play that cat safety, who's going to be their backups. That's concerning to me, and you're always worried about how things are going to look game one because I remember a few years ago there was a little bit of buzz, thinking the secondary, and it was a disastrous year. Some of those transfers just never panned out. They looked good in practice, didn't look good in games, and that happens sometimes. So, and West Virginia ended up going young at the end of that year, and help develop a little bit, but it's a concern. It's a concern until you see it. And I think, look at what, I've talked to a couple people on this Penn State beat this week, and everyone's been a little bit frustrated with Drew Aller. But look what he did to West Virginia last year. Might have been his best
yeah,
game of the year.
yeah,
And
by
that's
far
what
too.
West Virginia fans remember of Penn State. So it's kind of a weird thing that kind of coming together here that West Virginia needs to show that they can play better because the way I look at this game, you got two good quarterbacks, you got two teams that want to run the football. If both teams do their job stopping the run on the other side, which quarterback's going to make the most plays?
Sure, absolutely. And my next question would be here. I guess what are some of the impact transfers from this offseason for West Virginia that Penn State fans should know about heading to Saturday, or I should say slash uh, who do you think could be some of the X factors for West Virginia if the Mariners are going to win this game? These players are going to have a big impact.
As far as transfers, West Virginia didn't do a lot on the offensive side. They did bring in two wide receivers, Jaden Bray from Oklahoma State and Justin Robinson from Mississippi State. Two big guys in the red zone that they didn't really have. They had some talent there, some young guys, but these are two bigger bodies. Both of them have made some plays in camp. Defensively, they brought in a bunch of guys. TJ Jackson up front, he's going to play on the defensive line. Reed Carrico at linebacker, he probably won't start, but he'll be in the mix. He played at Ohio State. And then secondary, like I said, six guys. Garnett Hollis is one. Aiden Garnes. You can go down the list there. I think a lot of those guys are going to see in the mix. In terms of X factors, to me, offensively, as weird as this sounds, I think it's Garrett Green. I think
Sure.
he's going to have to make plays in this game, either by running the ball in those situations where he can scramble, or making those throws that necessarily weren't he didn't make a year ago. And I think that that's been the focus. I think that there's a lot of optimism around Garrett. And defensively, I think you pick it out of a hat. There's a lot of guys. I think that linebacker position has gotten a lot of buzz, and there's a lot of, I guess, faith in what that group can be. But I
Sure.
think those two guys that are going to start there, Trey Lathan and Josiah Trotter, both have to have very big games, especially with how Penn State wants to run the football and how creative their new offensive coordinator can get. As West Virginia saw firsthand, single-handedly, when Kansas came in and beat the Mountaineers in Morgantown in 2022.
You brought up Josiah Trotter, a Pennsylvania native. That actually, two quick, easy ones here to finish this up. That takes me to another Pennsylvania native. Rodney Gallagher was obviously a major recruit for both of these programs. West Virginia ultimately kept him on signing day in December of 2022. He had a nice freshman season last year. 10 receptions for 74 yards and 15 carries for 87 yards. What type of role is Gallagher going to have for West Virginia this year? And should Penn State fans be ready to see quite a bit of him on Saturday?
He's definitely going to have a bigger role. The problem with Rodney last year, and this was kind of my belief coming into his freshman year, he had to play quarterback for his high school. So he didn't
Yep.
really get to play a lot of receiver. He had to learn how to play wide
Yep.
receiver. And most people kind of assumed it's just easy. You plug them in and they go. It doesn't really work that way. And I think
Yep.
that was an adjustment for him. They found ways to manufacture him getting the ball, but he had to become better. And that's something he worked all offseason on. Running routes, learning how to play the position, and just kind of the nuances that you need to know if you're going to be effective as a wide receiver. So that automatically going to put him in a better position. He might even play some snaps on defense. You know, they've been kind of moving him around, which is something they pitched to him in recruiting. It's nothing new. He's really good man defender. You know, he's played some snaps there in that nickel type role. So I think he plays in this game. I think he's going to be in the mix at inside wide receiver, but don't be surprised if he plays a snap or two, you know, in nickel or
Sure,
in certain sets and certain situations.
sure. And as perhaps as they listen to this, there's of course Penn State fans that'll be heading down to Morgantown this weekend. Um, I guess real fun one here. Just any food recommendations that you have for Penn State fans or any of that sort as they come into Morgantown this weekend for this game in Morgantown, outside Morgantown. Anything you got?
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun places to come to come eat down here, and it's a college town. You know, I recommend everybody if you have the chance, if you get there Friday night, to go down on High Street and enjoy that a little bit. It's definitely a college bar type atmosphere. There's a lot of different restaurants to choose from. My personal favorite in Morgantown, if you're looking for wings or a sports bar atmosphere, is Mario's Fishbowl. There's two locations, so you can find those. Just plug them in your GPS. One of them is the old building, which I prefer, kind of the towny spot, and one of them is the new one, which is much bigger and allows people to kind of get in there. Now it gets packed early. Another popular one, it's near the stadium, is Kegler's, a big place here in town, and they got a lot of other food options too. There's more. I think there's more food options than people. It seems like sometimes here because there's a lot of different things you can do. There's a
Yep.
lot of and you know if you're a nature guy, you get here early. You know there's Cooper's Rock. There's a lot of different things you can do here, and it's a small town, but it's kind of surprising. You know you can find yourself kind of doing a lot of things that maybe you didn't expect, but kind of reminds me of Stillwater in a sense. If you've ever been out to Oklahoma, I think that the two towns are kind of similar.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Keenan, for coming on today and talking a little bit about this weekend's matchup. It should be a good one, and yeah, thanks again, and perhaps we'll have you up back on down the road. These two teams meet again.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man.